A field of beaten soldiers. A handful of them refuse to kneel. A queen says one word, and two of them burn. I watched that scene go out live in 2017, and I've been arguing about it with people ever since. 9 years of it. Comment sections, group chats, one memorable falling out over dinner. And somewhere in those 9 years, I came around to thinking we have all been staring at the wrong person. Everyone watches Daenerys. Everyone watches Randyll Tarly go up in flame. I keep watching the man standing behind her, the one who argues and loses the argument, and then just watches it happen. The look on his face ended up doing more damage to that queen than the fire ever did. I want to talk about Tyrion's face. August 13th, 2017, Season 7, Episode 5, Eastwatch. The episode before, out on the Goldroad, Daenerys had done something Westeros had not faced since the last Targaryen dragons died out. She brought a Dothraki horde and a full-grown dragon down onto a Lannister supply train and left almost nothing of it standing. I love how the next episode opens, because it tells you how badly that landed. Bronn hauls Jaime Lannister out of the Blackwater Rush, and the two of them sit there in the mud, working out that this war is already over. A Dothraki horde. 3 dragons, one of which had just done that on its own. When the smoke clears, the survivors are standing in a field with their swords on the ground. And Daenerys does something conquerors in this world rarely bother with. She gives them a choice. Among the captives is Randyll Tarly, and I need a minute on him, because I have watched this fandom slowly sand that man down into a noble martyr, and I find it baffling. House Tarly was sworn to House Tyrell, sworn at that very moment, that very season, and Cersei Lannister had recently destroyed the Great Sept of Baelor, killing Margaery Tyrell, a sitting queen and the daughter of Randyll's liege lord, along with Mace Tyrell and Loras, the Tyrell heir. She erased the family he had given his word to in a single afternoon. Randyll's answer to that was to march on Highgarden for Cersei. And here's the detail I always come back to, because the show hands it to you itself. Back in Season 5, Stannis Baratheon stands in front of Samwell Tarly and tells him that his father won the Battle of Ashford, the only battle Robert lost in the entire rebellion. Randyll Tarly fought for the Targaryens. He beat Robert Baratheon on their behalf. So Daenerys offers him terms. He tells her he already has a queen. Tyrion, on screen, argues hard against executing prisoners of war and suggests the wall. Randyll refuses that too, on the grounds that she has no right to sentence him to anything. And then his son Dickon steps forward to stand beside him, and she says the word. For years I watched that scene as a test of her character. I think I had it backwards. I think somebody was teaching her something. Watch it as a sequence instead of a moment, and something starts to itch. Step 1. She destroys the army escorting the Highgarden plunder back to King's Landing. Total, overwhelming, unanswerable force. The survivors stand in a field and watch their world burn on a road, and when it is over, they are still on their feet. Step 2. She talks to them. Cersei is the monster. I have come to free you from her. It is the argument she has been making since Slaver's Bay, and it is the version of herself she actually believes in. Some of them kneel. Plenty of them don't. Step 3. Drogon, already perched on the hill behind her this entire time, turns and roars at them, and the offer hardens into a threat. That gets her most of the rest. But some men are still standing. I find that astonishing every single time. After the slaughter, after the promise, after the dragon, some men are still standing. So she does the fourth thing. She picks out the most powerful man left on his feet and makes an example of him, and the field goes down on its knees. That is the architecture of the scene, and it looks ugly laid out flat. Mercy got her nowhere. Argument got her nowhere. Intimidation carried her most of the way. Fire finished it. We learn from what works. All of us do. That's the whole horror of it. Now, the part that snags on me every time, and I want to be careful with it, because the show is careful. Daenerys singles out the father. The Dothraki start walking Randyll away, and Dickon steps forward on his own and tells her she will have to kill him too. Tyrion works on that boy, reminds him he's the future of House Tarly, reminds him what just happened to House Tyrell. Randyll himself nods at his son, quietly telling his heir to kneel and live. Dickon holds. So the boy put himself in front of her, and she took him at his word. That's the choice I keep circling. She could have overruled a stubborn young man's worst decision. Tyrion asks her to. Put them in a cell, he says, and she tells him she won't build a reputation for chaining traitors, because the moment chains become the safe option, nobody kneels at all. Which is a coherent argument. It is also a queen deciding that the tidiest version of her message is worth more than the one man in that field who is volunteering to die for nothing. She burned him, and I have never once read cruelty in it. What I read is a woman for whom it simply did not matter who ended up in the fire, so long as the message got through. Hold on to that. We're going to need it. And there is a piece of the production I cannot stop chewing on. In the previous episode, the show finally gives Dickon Tarly a scene of his own. A young man fresh from his first battle at Highgarden, quietly admitting that he hated killing men he used to hunt with. It's the one moment where he becomes a person. And the beat the writers choose to end it on is Bronn laughing at his name. One episode building him into someone you might like. The next one burns him alive before the first act is out. Whatever you make of that decision, nobody can accuse the show of over-preparing us for it. Before I get to what that afternoon actually cost her, I have to deal with the argument that has swallowed this conversation for years. The claim is that the Tarlys are where Daenerys turns, where the mask slips, where you start to see the Mad King's daughter underneath. So let's run that same test on everybody else, because I have never once seen it applied evenly. Jon Snow, Season 6, Episode 3. He comes back from the dead, and he hangs the 4 men who murdered him. Alliser Thorne, Bowen Marsh, Othel Yarwick, and Olly, a child. No offer of exile, no chance to repent, nothing on the table at all. The show holds on that hanging for a long, deliberate stretch, and hanging is a slow way to go. Now sit the logic side by side with me. Jon sees enemies who killed him, and traitors who broke their vows to the Watch. Those men saw themselves keeping their vows and stopping a foreign invasion, the Wildlings. Daenerys sees enemies who sacked the seat of her allies, and traitors who broke their vows to the Tyrells. Those men saw themselves keeping their vows and stopping a foreign invasion, her. Structurally, I cannot tell those two scenes apart. Jon executes 4 out of 4, one of them a boy, with nothing offered. Daenerys executes 2 out of hundreds after offering twice. One of them gets read as grim necessity, the other gets read as the birth of a tyrant. And Jon is hardly alone in here. Ned Stark opens this entire series by beheading a terrified deserter who had harmed nobody and was telling the truth about the dead. Robb Stark takes Rickard Karstark's head for killing Willem and Martin Lannister, 2 boys, both prisoners. Tyrion, the man making the disappointed face, set the Blackwater alight with thousands of Stannis' men inside it, and he slept fine afterwards. Then there's Stannis himself, and this one I struggle to get past. He sentences Mance Rayder to burn for refusing to kneel. Same crime the Tarlys committed, same sentence handed down. Jon puts an arrow through Mance's heart partway through to spare him the worst of it. And book readers will tell you, Mance walks away from that pyre entirely. The mercy came from Jon though. Stannis lit it, and later he burns his own daughter. Large parts of this fandom still call him Stannis the Manus. I do want to be fair here, because the case against her isn't empty, and I'd be embarrassed to pretend otherwise. The strongest count sits in the books. In A Dance with Dragons, after Unsullied are poisoned at a wine shop in Meereen, she hands the wine cellar over to Skahaz the Shavepate and tells him to question the man sharply. Skahaz suggests he question the daughters sharply instead, while their father watches, because that will wring names out of him faster. She tells him to do as he thinks best, so long as he brings her names. That is a queen authorizing the torture of 2 women to get a lead, and she knows precisely what she is doing. But watch what happens to that moment out in the discourse. Every other ruler in this world does the same or worse, and gets read inside the context of a brutal medieval society. She does it once, and it becomes a diagnosis. Judging a pseudo-medieval world by modern standards is fine by me. Doing it to one character while everybody else walks, that's a verdict going out looking for its evidence. So if the double standard is that plain, why does Tyrion look the way he looks? Because there is a real answer buried in that face, and I think it's better than anything either side of this argument usually offers. Tyrion is not upset that the Tarlys died. He's a Lannister. He watched his father hang men for less. He knows the price of treason down to the coin. Randyll Tarly broke his oath to his liege, marched under the banner of the woman who wiped out that liege's family, and then stood in a field and dared a dragon rider to do something about it. In the political grammar of this world, that man was dead the moment he opened his mouth. He isn't mourning House Tarly either. He stood in that field and told Dickon to his face that the boy was the future of his house. So he understood exactly what was being ended, and he'd already tried to stop it. What gets him is the speed, because this is the woman who told him she was going to break the wheel, who said she wouldn't be one more Targaryen, burning her way onto one more throne. She was going to be something this continent had never had. Then a lord told her no, and inside about 90 seconds, she did what Tywin would have done, what Cersei would have done, what Aegon would have done, and that is what's sitting on his face. He is looking down at two corpses and finding them horribly familiar. That's my answer to the question this fandom keeps asking. He could have lived with the outcome. What he couldn't live with was watching her turn ordinary in front of her whole council in the space of a single conversation. Now, there's a serious argument on the other side of this, and I'd rather meet it than dodge it. Ned Stark had standing. He was Warden of the North, carrying out the law of his own land. Daenerys, at this point, is a claimant with a foreign army camped on somebody else's field, demanding an oath she hasn't earned yet. Killing men who won't swear to you starts to look a lot like conquest with paperwork on it. I take that seriously. I also think it's weaker than it sounds. Her claim runs through a dynasty that held these 7 kingdoms for nearly 3 centuries. She was born in Westeros herself, on Dragonstone, and when she landed, she had the Reach and Dorne behind her, a share of the Iron Islands, and Tywin Lannister's own son serving as her hand. Purely foreign never really described her, and the reason most of that support had evaporated by the time we reach this scene is a story about Tyrion's failures as a strategist. It certainly doesn't get Randyll off the hook. His stated reason is that Cersei was born here and has lived here all her life. So was Daenerys. He fought for her family and beat Robert Baratheon doing it. Cersei murdered his liege lord's entire line. When I look at him honestly, what I see is a pragmatist. House Tyrell is finished. There's a vacuum in the Reach, and House Tarly sits perfectly placed to fill it. He backed the winner. Then the winner lost, and the man suddenly discovered he'd had convictions all along. Which brings me to what that afternoon actually did to her. In her last scene, Olenna Tyrell tells Daenerys to stop borrowing other people's methods, to stop being the clever girl in the council chamber, to be a dragon. The Goldroad is where she takes that advice, 1 episode later, and burns an army off a road. The Tarlys are where she finds out what it actually buys her. 2 men burn, and a field of soldiers kneels. So run it forward with me. 2 men bought her 100 knees. What would a city buy? That is the arithmetic she carries to King's Landing. She'd already shown the realm what she could do. She'd already told them what she wanted. She'd already threatened them. And on the day the bells rang, she did the one thing that had ever reliably worked for her. She followed through. Everything Daenerys Targaryen ever learned about ruling Westeros, she learned in a single afternoon on one burnt road between Highgarden and King's Landing. She'd been cornered her entire life, and she had found exactly one lever that moved people every time she pulled it. On Dragonstone, hours before the attack, she tells Jon she has no love in this country, only fear, and then she accepts it. Let it be fear. She says it the way a general says it. Nothing snapped when those bells rang, as far as I can see. She had been taught, very thoroughly, by men who died refusing to kneel, and she took the lesson to scale. And here's the part that genuinely gets me. The lesson was garbage. It never scaled. The men in that field were soldiers. They had a lord, a banner, an oath, a reason to defy her, and so they had a knee that was worth bending. The people of King's Landing had none of that. Across 8 seasons, the small folk of that city only ever care who sits the throne when they're starving or being fed. They didn't rise when Cersei blew up the sept and killed a queen. There was no allegiance left in them to break. Burning them got her nothing that burning the Red Keep wouldn't have. She took a real lesson from a real success and carried it into a situation that didn't resemble it in any way that mattered. I've watched people I love do smaller versions of that, and I've done it myself. It is the most ordinary human failure there is, and watching it happen at the scale of a dragon is the most frightening thing this show ever did. I don't believe Daenerys Targaryen was undone by something hiding in her blood. I think she was undone by one afternoon where the cruelest available option worked perfectly, and by a room full of advisors who watched her learn it, disapproved in silence, and never got round to teaching her anything else. So tell me down in the comments, because I actually want to know. If Randyll Tarly had taken the wall, if he'd knelt or swallowed his pride and put on the black, does King's Landing still burn? Or does one man's knee change everything that comes after? I'll be in there reading.